Launching right into it, Henry. First question. What was your typical day like at Boeing at the height of your career?
Well, this has changed significantly, whether you put it the height or the middle or the end. Over the years, initially, most of my time was spent learning the Boeing company processes, the technologies, and the organization, since it was a very complex company with a lot of diversity, which is one of the reasons I went with Boeing.
Right.
Later, work on specific projects, supporting laboratory evolution, joining group meetings and discussions, planning future efforts made up my day, and it changed in terms of what was the most important object of that day, whether it was something in development, some consulting, or planning future efforts that I spent. Some of my days also were spent on travel to visit vendor sites.
Very good. Okay, next question. Did you know that you wanted to work in aerospace when you began your higher education, or was that decided later? I'd like to learn more about the education portion of your career, since this was kind of glossed over in the first episode. Anything you can share would be appreciated.
Well, in high school, I guess I began to develop an interest in some branch of science and thought that it looked very interesting in physics, especially nuclear physics, which was a big interest back in those days. But through a summer job, I became acquainted with several people who had gotten bachelor's degrees in physics and wished that they had more electronics background. So I said, well, maybe that's a better way to go, where electronics looks like it's the foundation of most of the new developments and technologies. And so I switched to a University of Minnesota where I could specialize in engineering, and particularly electrical engineering.
That's very interesting. Even as long as I've known you, Henry, which listeners out there, it's been a while, I never knew the actual story. I knew the main points, I knew the main places that you went and the things you accomplished, but not those finer details from that phase. So that's pretty neat to finally learn. Okay, so in episode 1, there is a Boeing plane shown or pictured, and this plane has a huge disc or something on top. What is this? Why haven't I ever seen one of these flying around in my whole life?
Okay, what that disc that rotates at the top is a phased array radar. It contains many elements which are broadcast in synchronism to be able to broadcast a very strong electrical signal and look at what comes back to them to detect other items that are in the vicinity of maybe several hundred miles. And the reason you don't see it is that the signal is very strong and would potentially interfere with many of the electronics that are operating within the country. Therefore, most of the time it's flying and being put to use is over uninhabited areas. But in actual conflicts where the U.S. is involved in conflicts that involve potential harm, then it's used to do surveillance of aircraft and other potential missiles that may be detrimental to United States, and to keep track of them.
Wow. And what is the official name of that aircraft?
Originally it was called AWACS, whereas it was developed as an airborne warning and control system, but later became an official aircraft of the U.S. as an E-3A.
Okay. And did you personally work on those?
Yes, I did. And it was involved in some of the contractor work, some of the system engineering and assessment of issues or features that were being considered for integration in that plane. And over many years, it's had many upgrades, which I also have been involved in.
Excellent. All right, next question. And this one has to do with your home and personal technology, which you've discussed quite a bit, not only in episode 1, but you revisited in episode 4. But as far as these episode 1 questions are concerned, here goes. How often do you upgrade your home and personal tech or technology? Is it expensive to maintain?
Well, in some of the devices, I have not had to upgrade in tens of years, but the technology continues to evolve, and the ability to produce electronics in, say, video, audio, and networking have evolved significantly, primarily in performance and in size of what it takes to be able to perform given functions, particularly video cameras. And as those things which have existed now for several years, I've not upgraded because as long as they function, then most of them don't need to be changed. But there are things that continue to change, and the cost is incremental. I've never outlaid everything at once. It's been incremental over time, and tried not to replicate things that don't seem to be necessary or that I need to understand. So it's probably more costly in terms of time. The time it takes to the installation, the maintenance of operating systems, updating my computers to the way that technology handles information better. So it's not been something that I couldn't afford, that I tried to be cost effective about in terms of what I was trying to understand, the security features I've tried to include, and some things that look nice.
Okay, very good. In episode 1, you mentioned something called Cujo. I'm not really clear on how that works. Can you explain?
Yeah, Cujo is an Ethernet-based electronic guard designed to keep unrecognized access to my home devices from external sources. The device sits right after my modem and router, but before any switch, Wi-Fi, or internal network or devices are accessed. Cujo recognizes all network devices that are in my system and also the communication outside by the source that it's coming from, and blocks those that are known issues are not allowed by my system. The devices that can try to gain access are blocked and recorded so that I can see what was being based on my system and what devices were being particularly attempted to be penetrated. And those actually are the cameras.
Okay.
I have a lot of cameras, and they're protected by Cujo by means of this device that does the block.
Okay, I see. Now, have you ever had anyone actually try to break into your home or trespass on your property? And if so, did your technology activate properly and assist in the situation?
I've not had anybody that I know of that's tried to access my home when I'm not here or when I am here. And yes, I have vendors. I have the kids next door that come to get their balls. I have real estate people, charity people that come to the door. And whenever they do, my alarm goes off telling me someone's entered the driveway. Or if someone might put an alarm on my mailbox. So when someone opens that box, I checked to see who it was. Was it the mailman or someone else checking the mail or someone wanting to take mail?
Right.
So my security system is continuing to monitor what's going on in around my house and in my house. And the reason I haven't gone into a alarm system that automatically calls the police, one, it's expensive to maintain, and two, there's a penalty in our community in dollars if they have a false alarm. The more false alarms you have, the more it costs.
I see. Okay, great. Very, very clear, effective answer to that. Now, the next question has to do with something or someone called Jibo. And for those of you out there who might not know this, Jibo is the world's first social robot for the home, introduced some years ago. And you can learn quite a bit more about that in episode 1 if you haven't already seen that. But that's where Henry first mentioned it. Now, the question, is Jibo still available for purchase? Is the product still supported?
And the answer is no. This is one of those bits of technology that was started by a group of people who thought that building some AI features into a home robot was important. And just recently, they have essentially folded their tent. They've dropped the Apple app, but the robot continues to function. It's just that the evolution of its firmware, etc., has stopped.
Okay.
There are others that are coming along now with the next generation of home robot called Misa. Looks like it may be part of that new generation, but again, trying to incorporate more AI, artificial intelligence, into an inanimate object.
Henry, you've said that Jibo is friendlier than Alexa. Does that mean you like it better? Which one is more reliable? Which do you use more? Give your overall thoughts on this topic.
Well, the purpose of me trying to go with Jibo, it was all based within the robot itself and didn't have a cadre of developers and other people in the background developing the conversations with Alexa. I have Alexa in essentially every room in my house,
right.
But it keeps track of, it also sits on my alarm systems so that it announces not only is someone invading my ground, but also when I get a telephone call. So it's more versatile than Jibo, but that wasn't the purpose of Jibo. Jibo is to see how is AI coming along in terms of interacting with people.